Hey gamers, this is Liz Davidson from Beyond Solitaire, and today I'm going to be reviewing Red Rising from Stonemaier Games.
Alright, so here's Red Rising, all set up for a solo game. This game is based on the Red Rising series. It's a young adult book series that is about a humanity that has spread across multiple planets in the solar system, including Mars. And they have restructured their society based on genetic engineering so that people are divided by color, with the reds being at the bottom and the golds being at the top. So in the book series, someone who is a red ends up becoming disguised as a gold and trying to infiltrate their society and get rid of the stratification that's been so unfair to everyone. In the game, however, really what you're doing is hand management. So the idea is that you start with a hand of cards, you get 5 to start with, and they have point values up here and different bonuses and contingencies on the bottom of the card. And your goal is to have the most points by the end of the game. So points are going to come from your hand. They're also going to come from having control of the first player token, advancing up the fleet track, getting influence at the Institute, and collecting helium. So all these different things will contribute to your score. What you do on your turn is relatively straightforward. You have 2 options for what you're going to do each turn, and those options are lead or scout. So when you lead, you deploy or place your card on any of the available locations. When you do that, you can do the deploy ability on the card, and then you're able to take a card from the top of any of the locations you did not just play to. So you deploy a card, do the ability, gain a card. Your other option when you lead is if you don't like any of the cards that are visible, you can take one from the top of the deck. When you take a card though, you get a location bonus, and you don't have that when you take off the top of the deck. So you roll your Mars die to determine what bonus you're going to get. Sometimes though, you like what's in your hand. You don't want to play a card. That means that you are going to scout. When you scout, you basically reveal the top card of the deck, but you don't take it. You have to place it out on any of these locations. However, when you do that, you get the bonus associated with your placement location. So you can still earn points and work towards other goals. So as we mentioned, you can get points in various ways, so each location gives you a different point bonus. Jupiter advances you on the fleet track, Mars gets you helium, Luna gains you the sovereign token, and then the Institute lets you place influence. And that's basically it. Do your best with your cards, use the bonuses to get as many extra points as you can, and then hopefully at the end you'll win by having the most points. The Automa, of course, is there to stop you and is going to try to beat you on points, and as is usual for an Automa from Stonemaier, this thing is a point-earning machine. By the way, we get to start with a house that gives us a bonus. The Automa only starts with 2 cards, no house, and its own Automa deck. When you play solo, there's a couple of other things to note. You set it up mostly like a 2-player game. You put some influence cubes from a neutral house just to kind of make this area more competitive. There are 5 cards that you remove from the game, which the rulebook will specify for you. And you set up even or odd here. And basically that means that you look at the starting cards that are laid out on the board. And if there are more even cards, you go with even. If there are more odd cards, you go with odd. And that is going to affect final scoring for the Automa. So basically they're going to score more for even cards, and you give them a starting advantage by setting it to even because there are more even cards out that they could theoretically get. So basically for the Automa's turn, you always draw 2 cards from the Automa deck. You do what's on them, and then whenever you run out of deck, you just shuffle it and start again. When you pull these cards over, this gives you information about location, whether the Automa is taking or deploying a card, and then any bonus information you might need. The arrow basically helps you figure out where to go if there's a need for a location tiebreaker. You can also have markers that just tell you Luna, as opposed to, say, a letter. But from these simple cards, the Automa essentially becomes a card-chomping machine that will accumulate and accumulate and accumulate, so you'd better be ready to keep up. So for scoring, you get whatever you get in a normal game. You score for what's in your hand, you score for what's in the fleet track, for your dominance at the Institute, and for any of the helium that you've picked up. The Automa scores a little differently. She's got a base score of 70 points. She'll always start with 70, and you always add from there. She also does get points for bonuses, so the Automa will score for the fleet track, for helium tokens, and for having the sovereign token, as well as influence. But you don't score her hand the way that you would score your own. Instead, you basically count off her cards, and then you sort out the matching ones, in this case even cards, versus non-matching. So then you discard what Automa has down to 20 cards. She can't just get cards forever and ever. But you dump the non-matching cards first because they are worth fewer points. And Automa gets 6 points per matching card. Yikes. So 6 points per even card she picks up. And then 3 points per non-matching or odd number card. If you change the difficulty level, that does change the card values, so you can make it easier or more difficult. There's also a variant that allows you to play with the cards that you removed at the beginning of the game. So you could play a solo variant with all cards. And that's basically how it works. Get as many points as you can, and hope the Automa doesn't kick your butt.
So now for some final thoughts. I was really excited to see a game come out about Red Rising. Red Rising is a series that I like fine, but what I was the most excited about is I think it's really cool when people make games about books, and I always like to see how those are going to be implemented. In this case, there were aspects that I liked. So in Red Rising, I thought the character art was very good. If you have read the books, you recognize a lot of the characters, and their synergies make a lot of sense between each other when you are trying to build a good hand in the game. So in that sense, the game is designed with a lot of thought about and sensitivity to who the characters are in the books. And if you have read Red Rising, that sounded repetitive, you will, I think, get a richer experience out of the game. I think my favorite part of the game actually was being able to recognize the characters and combine them accordingly and kind of know who I might be looking for. That said, I also think the game is a bit of a missed opportunity thematically. Red Rising is a dystopian story about a highly stratified society. There's war, and there is a really brutal way of training the elite members of that society. And, there's a lot of discontent at every level. And it just seemed to me that a game that is about collecting cards in your hand to get a lot of points is a very sterile expression of a very violent and tumultuous fictional world. So if you're looking for Red Rising, the game, to really capture the feeling of being part of a rebellion, or quashing a rebellion, or fighting with star fleets, or replicating the training at the academy that they all go to in the first book, you're going to be disappointed. There were a lot of roads that a designer could go down to make this game, and none of them were chosen, and in that sense, I actually think that this is a bit of a missed opportunity. The game that came out of it is okay, but I think that you could have had a game that really captured the essence of the books in a deeper way, and that's what I admit I was hoping for. Game-wise, this game is fine. It's not a game that really gets me itching to play again right away, but it's completely fun while you are playing it. I enjoyed building my hand. I liked trying to get some synergy between the cards that I had. I enjoyed the tension of trying to figure out what to do because you have to play some of your cards. You can't just hold on to all of them. So, what is going to be the most advantageous card to give up? What am I going to be able to get back for that in terms of points or in terms of other cards? The Automa is, as usual, pretty brutal and can be difficult to defeat because it's just chomping away, getting point after point after point, and you have to figure out how you're going to catch up. So, functionally, the game works fine. It's a beautiful production. The rules are clear and nicely written and nicely printed, and everything works. It's just that it feels like the game is missing a little something, like a little fire, to really make it something special. And I wonder if that fire could have been taken from the actual book series. I also know that mechanically this game borrows from Fantasy Realms, but that's a game I've never played. I really can't speak to the connections between the two. That said, trying to get the most points and have the most effective hand can be satisfying. For me, that's not the most exciting game to play, but if it sounds like that's something that's up your alley, Red Rising is a totally solid game that I think a lot of people will enjoy. For me, it's a 6 out of 10. Thanks so much for watching, and happy gaming, everybody.